It is time for an urgent real-time Bitcoin forecast, and this is the war zone construction zone version, so ignore all the mess in the background. I've just got finished building my zero gravity desk, and it rocks. It showed me things that you just can't see unless you're really, really zoomed out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to zoom out, as you can see here, in this particular chart, and we're going to pay specific attention to one zone, two zones, three zones, and then four zones in here, even this tiny little zone, to see whether we're going to go up or down. Now, here's the thing that most people don't realize. In order to win trades, you have to be right more often than you're wrong, right? Now, the easiest way to be right is the way I've developed to be able to be right as often as possible is to be able to know what direction a chart pattern or chart indicators, no, not really indicators, but chart geometrics are pointing to, and then also comparing all the past historical and statistical invalidations. So if Head and Shoulders looks like, hey, it's going to dump, but it starts to not dump, you kind of want to know early that it's not going to dump and it's going to go reverse and pump back up again, right? So you can do that. But that's super, super hard because not only do you have to memorize 50 different patterns, including harmonics, you've got to also memorize 15 to 30 different invalidation data points. So per geometric, so that's 500-600 different variables that you have to just memorize. Keep it all in your head all the time and hope that you're not so tired that you miss one. Because if you do, then you're going to lose a lot of money. So that's what my algorithm does. But most people don't do it that way because they can't memorize 700 different patterns and invalidation data points. What most people do, and this works best for most people, and it even works for me personally because it's just easier. Get your orientation right. In other words, get your bias right. If you think everything's going to go up and you see a Head and Shoulders, you think, meh, I'm sure it'll get invalidated and go up, and you'll be right. If you think everything's going to go down, and you see an inverse Head and Shoulders, and you see a falling wedge, you'll go, nah, I'm sure it'll keep going down. And yeah, sure enough, the falling wedge just kind of bleeds out and then dumps again. The inverse Head and Shoulders that's supposed to pump does a micro little pump and then just dumps again. You see what I'm saying? So your bias has to be right for your trades to be right most of the time. Oh, hey, here's a bearish pattern, here's bearish indicators, bearish news. It's going to go up. So you bet long and you win. Now for precision, that requires if you're going to do 100x leverage, if you're going to do 500x leverage, you need to know the invalidation points. But by and large, your orientation has to be right. Your bias has to be right. So my bias recently has been wrong, mainly because I just didn't study these charts. So let's start with this in here, this tiny little action here, this tiny little bit, and show you why I was wrong and why I'm right now. Watch. And why we're going to make you a lot of money because I'm going to give you these signals for free that normally only go to our VIP members. So this is that tiny little, tiniest circle. This is the tiniest circle. Let's zoom out a little bit more. Okay, here it is. Here's this zone. I'm going to put this on I think I'm going to tripod this and see if I can record this. Okay, so here's the tiniest circle. What do you see in here? Well, I'll show you. Ta-da, rising wedge. So what do rising wedges do? Yeah, now you can see it in blue. Rising wedge. And what do rising wedges do? Rising wedges dump. So I was expecting a dump here, but we just reversed, and I thought, we're going to get a tiny little bump, but then this tiny little bump ended up being, I was expecting it to bump up to here, but then we broke through the top. So, that's weird. That's really weird, isn't it? Aren't rising wedges still supposed to dump? Will this still dump? Now I'm going to answer that question as we zoom out and look for context. Let's zoom back out and see a rising wedge that supposedly should have dumped but didn't dump. So zooming out, zooming out, zooming out, and lo and behold, what do we have here so far? It's partial. Let me see if I can zoom out even bigger. Oh, I see. I know this pattern, don't I? Isn't this a head and shoulders? Head and shoulders would mean that the target would be way down here. So this rising wedge really is going to dump, isn't it? This rising wedge that we drew is going to dump because it's at the end of a head and shoulders, and it's just kind of consolidating or dispersing or accumulating or distributing or whatever you want to call it. And it's just going to keep dumping by about this much. So we should dump for Bitcoin down to about this price of $2,100 or $21,000 there. $21,000 Bitcoin is where we should go. Will we? Should we? The assumption that this is an inverse head and shoulders would be wrong. An inverse head and shoulders requires 3 perfectly enclosed geometric spaces. 3. And how many enclosed spaces do we have? You put pressure in this will hold pressure. You put pressure in this will hold pressure. You put pressure in this, you fill this up with high nitrogen or oxygen or even water, what will happen? It'll leak out right there. It doesn't close. It doesn't touch. So because we don't have 3 perfect or 4 perfect points on this neckline, this is not a valid head and shoulders. So this doesn't have dump pressure. This doesn't have pressure. This has pressure going downwards here, pressure going downwards here, but no pressure going downwards here. So now my bias is totally wrong. I thought we were going to go down, but it looks like we're going to go up instead. How do we, let's look, let me see how do I do this with my hand not getting in the way of everything? Let's zoom back into this. Okay, let's zoom back into this real quick and see if we can start building a bullish case here. Let's go back in here and start see how hard this is? TA is not for the simple-minded. Let me see if I can, hold on. Okay, good. All right, let's see if we can build a bullish case. Well, we've got a falling channel, this big, long, blue falling channel, but we've got so much action down here, and the channel doesn't have many confirmation points confirming the resistance point. We should have more touches here, more touches here, more touches here. We barely even have a touch here. We didn't even touch here, you see? We didn't enclose pressure right there. So this isn't very compelling, so let's keep looking. You gotta be kidding me. Really? This is bullish. You see what this is? It's a bullish triangle. Now it's easier to see. You see why this rising wedge didn't dump? Because it had the force of these 3 triangles in here pushing everything up. All right, so does that mean that we're not going to follow this big long red arrow down to $23,000 or $22,000 and dump on Bitcoin? Like, it's not going to go that deep because number one, we don't have a actual head and shoulders. Well, is it going to go at least a little bit so that I can get out of my shorts if I have any shorts open? Am I going to get a better long entry? To do that, let's zoom out and see, look for more context. Let's zoom out, zooming out even farther, zooming out even farther still. All right, this is about all we need. Bam. We have a perfect and beautiful, this is from like, what, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, falling wedge, and it's massive, and we're just now starting to bump up and get some speed. We're starting to accelerate from the bounce from the bottom for this bullish wedge, and this bullish falling wedge first target's going to be right around even at $60,000. $60,000 per Bitcoin. Now let's examine more closely the anatomy of this particular falling wedge. We're going to zoom in particularly to this newly drawn black trend line at the base of this falling wedge and see where that takes us, shall we? Dive in. All right, zooming in. And since we know that this is not a head and shoulders anymore, what I'm going to do is get rid of this line. Bam, gone. So it's a much cleaner chart. So we can just focus on this black line. This black line shows us that we have a rising channel with 3 rejections at the bottom. 3 bullish rejections. Let's look for some more hints now. Remember this guy that pumped really hard? This is also an inverse head and shoulders. Am I in the way? Let's make it clear and obvious. Here's this guy for you. But isn't current price about the same as this neckline? Let's just draw a line to see the relationship. There, we drew a line. Wait a second. This is weird. this, by drawing a line for support and resistance with the rejections, what am I seeing? Yeah, this is actually a bullish right triangle. Look at that. Bullish right triangle with 2 rejections inside the triangle again. So every time we try and get back inside this particular triangle, this Bermuda Triangle zone, we get rejected. We get rejected. In fact, the last time, the most recent dump we had just a couple weeks ago, didn't even touch the bottom, didn't even touch support. So we're getting front running, we're getting buoyancy off of that bottom black line. That's really bullish. So now let's zoom back into this zone, to this zone, to this zone, and see if this red arrow, how far this red arrow will go down. That's kind of important, isn't it? If you're holding spot, maybe not as much, but if you're using leverage, it's very important. And zooming in, and zooming in again. How low will this arrow go? Well, you can't even see it because my head. Here it is. How low will it go? To answer that question, realistically, you see this purple neckline created by this inverse head and shoulders, or this bullish triangle right here? We didn't touch it. We didn't touch it at the top. What that means is, again, we're getting front running here. If we're getting front running here and there's enough buying volume to make sure that we don't have to rely on this trend line for support, then what's happening is we're resisting going back into this triangle. There's this triangle, or let's just make this easy. We're resisting going under the purple line. We're resisting going under the purple line. Will that always be the case? Will we just go up only? It looks like normally what ends up happening is, if we do end up going under this purple line, we'll get rejected. We go under the purple line a little bit, we create a wick, we get rejected, and then bounce, poof, and go straight up. But will we even go down that far at all? To answer that question, it's just going to have to be 24-hour vigilance. You're just going to have to constantly watch this chart to see where the exact final bottom is going to be, and I'm going to announce it for you on Twitter or X at OTC_Bitcoin. Now, normally that's for VIP Bitcoin-signals.org members only, but since I got my new workstation set up, woohoo! Can you see that? Actually, what am I doing? I guess you can't see it because of my chair. There it is. Yeah. I'm going to show you how often, how frequently, and how much money you can make, how fast you can make tons of money by trading precision leverage trades with me. And that's going to be public and free at x.com/OTC_Bitcoin. Let's get rich together. You guys ready?